And then one other thing too, if anyone's ever thinking of putting a center console on these 13 whalers, it was a little tricky mounting the console to the boat because it's really just fiberglass skin on top of foam. There's no sort of strong anchor points or plywood reinforcements under this deck. So I originally started out with some L-channel aluminum. And so in here you can see that's what these bolts, so there was, I think it was 2" by 2" aluminum L channel, and I had used 3M 4200, and so I bedded that to the deck, and then these screws went into that aluminum, and they're blind screws, unfortunately, because this console has a false floor that's about right here running all the way down. And those held and worked great, except for I started noticing a little bit of the deck. Only under this forward left screw, the deck was starting to delaminate from the foam. And so that was a bit of a problem. And that was after running this thing through really hard, really fast over ridiculous conditions. So it was not so surprising to see that happen. So what I ended up doing was taking the same adhesive, which is 3M 4200. It is, it's kind of like a really strong sealant, but it's technically an adhesive, so it says on the package. And so I used that, and I laid a bead all the way around, except for the center well, obviously for drainage. And that really secured the console down to the deck. And I think it just gives a lot more area for the adhesion as opposed to just a 2-foot section of L channel. And so that has spread the forces out over the much larger area, and I've been running it just as hard, haven't noticed any problems whatsoever. So that's definitely how I would recommend mounting one of these consoles, because delamination on the deck is a bit of a problem, and that can kind of ruin the deck. Luckily, I caught it just in time, or really I caught it just as it started to happen, and this just really having as much surface area for the mount adhesion is the safest way to go. That's gonna keep everything, all the forces nice and level. And then the only other slight problem that I ran into, or I didn't really think out, was the steering cable. And so you can see this is a pretty tight bend for it. It's kind of just at the limit of what the manufacturer recommends. I think it was an 8-inch radius. And this is a bit tighter than that. And I will say the steering is great. It's really smooth. So there's no issues with it yet. But yeah, I just wish I had thought of it a little bit more. It just, unfortunately, was something I had kind of didn't think about. The other plan was to put a hole around here, and then obviously have some sort of boot or something just to tidy up the look, and run the cable through a hole, and then you have more room for bigger turns. But it took a little bit of finessing to get this cable into place, but once I did, it's been working fine. So maybe it wears out quicker, but so far no problems. But that's something to keep in mind if anyone's gonna think of a build like this. I really wanted to keep everything nice and clean and tight going to the motor, and being able to run it through this sump hole already was a big advantage, just in terms of keeping things neat. Also, just in case anyone was wondering, I put, these are some stainless steel inserts, threaded inserts, so these aren't like holes in the hull. There's a, you know, they're an insert for a screw to go into. I thought I might have wanted to put a trolling motor set up on the boat, and so this was kind of there for a potential mount that if I wanted to do so, at least I had the option. I haven't needed to, or I haven't done it yet, but the option's there if it's wanted. So that's what those 5 threaded inserts are for. And this paint is the Total Boat wet edge paint. I was somewhat familiar with it from other projects, and I think it's great for what it is. It's just a 1-part paint, and it's not the most expensive. It goes down pretty well, and it's pretty tough. There's scratches in certain areas, which I somewhat expect. It's been a little tough on the deck. You can see there's areas where it just kind of comes up, but I guess every year or so I might come and touch these areas up. I did spray it with a spray gun. I think that's really the only way to go. I tried to do the roll and tip on other projects, and it just would never really come out looking good at all. So I just used a cheap spray gun from Harbor Freight and a little 3-gallon compressor. It takes forever. You gotta kind of wait for the compressor to keep up, but it really, you can get a pretty good paint job with it. So this was the Total Boat Whaler Blue, the classic Whaler Blue, and then I just did a white on the outside, and it turned out really great. So that's the paint scheme we have going. And this, if you can see here, yeah, you can see really right here, you could probably see better. So I sprayed some non-skid on this front deck portion because that's where standing, doing fishing, stuff like that. And so that was just some non-skid powder. Again, that was really easy to do. It's very fine grains, but it really makes a huge difference. And this stuff was fine enough that you can mix it up with the paint and then shoot it through with the gun, and it wouldn't clog up. And it comes out really even looking, really nice looking, I guess professional looking as well. And this whole back deck too has that same non-skid, and you don't really feel it, but it makes a big difference between having the non-skid and then having just flat paint. Okay, so that's it. I just wanted to share this because I know there's other people out there thinking of doing stuff like this. This is what I did. It's kind of a little bit of how I did it, and it's worked out great, and it really brought this boat back to life.